So today, this weekend actually, our theme, what we're going to be investigating is love. Okay, so we all think that we know what love is, but the Buddhist notion of love is a little bit different than our regular societal notion of love. And so we have to differentiate between what we call attachment and love. Yeah, before we get into what love is, we have to differentiate it from attachment. And the second thing we have to do is see the disadvantages of anger and hostility, because that's going to interfere with our generation of love. Okay, so love, very simply, is the wish for somebody to have happiness and the causes of happiness. That's what it is. Very simple definition of it. Okay. Of course, that opens a whole other bag of worms in terms of, well, what is happiness? And what are the causes of happiness? Because there's different kinds of happiness, different causes of the different kinds of happiness, and so on. So that's a whole other topic. But we really have to differentiate love and compassion if we want to develop the kind of love that is spoken of in the Buddhist context, or I would say even in the Christian context, where love is not limited to a few living beings, but it's able to be spread out so that it applies to all living beings. And so also so that it's much more constant and much firmer than what we typically call love nowadays. Okay, so how we typically think of love, first of all, comes from the movies, and our mind goes first to romantic love. Yeah, which is actually, I think, historically a fairly new idea. It didn't exist in the West a few centuries ago. And in many countries today, still there's no idea of romantic love. Marriage is arranged by parents. It is founded mostly on the idea of, having families, continuing the lineage, and economic stability, family connections. We see actually that this was the same in Europe when you look at the kings and the queens and who they married in European history. Even as late as Queen Victoria, you made so many political alliances because of marriage. It had nothing to do with romance or love. Yeah. And similarly, in many countries today, it's much more of a practical issue, and the young people involved don't really have a whole lot of choice. Their parents choose for them. We usually think that that's quite unfair and kind of rotten, but it's not necessarily so. It depends on how you were brought up to think about marriage. Yeah, if you were brought up to think about falling in love with the one and only, then no choice seems like really a bad deal, and you're stuck with whoever your parents choose. On the other hand, if you're brought up with the idea that your parents have more wisdom than you do, and they can see more factors involved in what will make a good, solid relationship than you do, then many young people trust their parents' decisions to pick a mate for them. Yeah, and they feel that that's something good. Anyway, that kind of thing happens, you go, oh wow, too much. But really, it's the case even now in many countries. Yeah. So. Yeah, we have to remember not everybody thinks like Americans. This is one of our problems in this country, is we think everybody thinks like us, and that's not true. In fact, there isn't one American way of thinking at all. There's many different ways. In any case, so we often think of love in terms of romantic love. Or we think of it in terms of parental love for their children, children being, loving their parents, being filial towards their parents. Or we might think of loving siblings, or loving our friends, okay? Or loving children, your children. So here, when you look at all these kinds of love, they're all related to a sense of me and how that person relates to me. And so imbued in that love and affection is a sense of they're special to me and I'm special to them. So there's this sense of specialness. Okay? So the way that the whole idea of I is enmeshed in love is, even with romantic love, you are my lover or my spouse or my boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you are. Yeah? So there's you are my, and the relationship. Or you are my children. Yeah. You are my parents. You are my friends. You are my siblings. Okay? So there's very much this idea of my, with me at the center, and then how somebody is relating to me. And so that kind of love tends to have a lot of strings attached to it, in terms of a lot of expectations of the roles that we play and the way we're going to relate to each other, because that person is somehow mine. Okay? So if you're my spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever it is, then there's the expectation that that person's going to say nice things to you, support you when you're feeling down, tell you you look good, tell you you're smart and intelligent and athletic and talented and whatever else you want to be. They're going to tell you that they love you and you're the one and only. So there's all that expectation in the relationship, isn't there? Yeah. With parents towards children, I love you because you're going to be everything that I was not able to be. Yeah? Parents, of course, don't say that so explicitly. Yeah? But a lot of it comes down to that. Everything I wasn't able to have, you're going to have. Everything I wasn't able to do, you're going to do. Yeah? Whether you want to have it or not, whether you want to do it or not, it doesn't matter. I love you, and so this is expected, that you will follow what I want for you. So, just as with the romantic relationships, because there's so much I involved, then when the person doesn't do what we want them to do, then there's going to be upset and turmoil. Yeah, so with the, when we add the word my, then there's the expectations. And of course, when there's expectations, whether they're spoken or unspoken, there's going to be disappointment, because nobody's ever going to do everything we expect them to do or everything we want them to do. So already it's a setup for disappointment. Similarly with parents' love for their children, I love you because you take care of me and you do good things for me and so on. But so there's the expectation that your parents are going to continue to do that, continue to support you, leave you an inheritance or whatever you're expecting from them. With siblings also, they're my siblings. This doesn't happen so much in American families, which are really breaking down, but in many other cultures, the bonds between siblings are very, very strong. And, people really come together to take care of their parents, or even after the parents die, they take care of each other. There's a very strong looking after each other because you're siblings. So again, the word my sibling, and the idea of blood relationship, we have the same blood. So that's what bonds us together. So I've always wondered about that, this whole thing of blood relationship, because I don't know about you, but I've never felt like I am my body. Yeah. And blood is genes, have to do with your body. It's always seemed to me like our body is something, actually they describe it in one of the texts as a guest house, that we live in temporarily, but it's certainly not who we are. So then the idea of, forming bonds with people simply because they have the same building materials as your guest house seems a little bit strange, but that's really the way the world works. Yeah, isn't it? People feel closer to blood relationship. So I question that, but most people don't. Okay, the idea with our friends, they're my friend. And why is somebody my friend? I mean, we don't choose our relatives, but we choose our friends. Yeah, and so there, why is somebody my friend? They agree with my ideas. Yeah, they reinforce we like to do things together. They reinforce my good qualities. When I have problems, they side with me. Yeah, if they didn't side with me and they sided with the opponent when I had a problem, they would no longer be my friend. Yeah? So, again, we see a lot of expectations coming in there. You're my friend, therefore you should da 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 da. And then when somebody doesn't fulfill those expectations, we get upset, we feel our trust has been betrayed, we get angry, disappointed, disillusioned, whatever. Okay? And, one of our big problems is because we have these expectations, and sometimes we aren't aware that we even have them. And even after they aren't fulfilled, we don't see it as our expectations. We see it as this is the way the relationship is supposed to be, objectively, and that person didn't comply with their part of the relationship. Yeah, we don't look at our part of the relationship. We always assume that we did things perfectly. Yeah, thus it's usually, in our view, the other person's fault. Okay, so you can see when there's the idea of my or mine belonging, attached to another person, we relate to them differently than if there's no idea of my or mine. Yeah? Even when we talk about people we don't like, we'll just call them enemies. They don't have to be a big, feuding enemy, but just people we don't like or get along with. Yeah? it's similar. As soon as we call somebody my enemy, or, the person I don't like, then again, there's a lot of other stuff that's imputed on that person, and it makes the relationship rather solid. Okay, so this is the way things function in society, and society just goes along with this and doesn't question it, which I think is one of the reasons why we have so many problems in society, is because we're not aware of this, okay? But when we become aware and we see the power of expectations and unmet expectations, then we begin to understand why there's difficulties in relationships and how we can start to improve those difficulties or free ourselves from them, which is basically by lessening the idea of I as part of the relationship. So especially when there's this idea of I, then we become attached to people because we've exaggerated their good qualities. We've put our expectations that they're going to meet our needs and that they're going to be what we want them to be. We've put this on them. And therefore we get attached to them because they're going to do something for us, It could be that they're going to meet our emotional needs for companionship or love, or meet our sexual needs, or meet our social needs, that you have to be in a couple relationship, or, maybe there's somebody who's very intelligent or richer or has a higher, place in society, so they're going to do something for us in that way, But these kinds of expectations that are in some way, so I'm going to benefit. And so this is based on exaggerating the person's good qualities, okay, and therefore getting attached. So attached, is a mind that's based on this exaggeration that then doesn't want to be separate or separated from whoever it is we're attached to, because that person's mine. So I don't want to be separated from them. And so there's this, there's a certain stickiness to the relationship. So usually those kinds of relationships, there's a lot of attachment and there is some genuine love, because love simply wants somebody to have happiness in the causes of it. So there may be some genuine love, but there may be this attachment, and then because we're attached to them, then we want them to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Whereas if they didn't benefit us in one way or another, we really wouldn't care if they had happiness and its causes. And if we didn't like them, then we would not want them to have happiness and its causes. Okay? So we see here in our usual model that our love, cannot be spread to everybody because there's so many opinions involved and so many ifs, ands, and buts and strings and expectations involved. And so that's why so many of our relationships are very tumultuous. And one of my teachers used to describe this by calling it the yo-yo mind. And depending on what somebody did for us, if they made us feel good, we loved them, and if they made us feel bad, we hated them. So we were constantly, I love you, I hate you, you're wonderful, I can't stand you. And so it's a yo-yo mind that isn't very stable because everything's framed in terms of my benefit. So, true or not true? It's a little bit hard to kind of own this, yeah, but it's interesting when we begin to really contemplate our life and see this. So this kind of attachment is one thing that interferes with our generating love for others, okay? Because the attachment makes it so partial, and also the attachment makes the affection very unstable, because the affection's there only when we benefit in some way, when they're doing something that makes us feel good. And when they hurt our feelings, then the person goes from the loved one category into the enemy category. So they may be in the enemy category only for an hour while you're having a big fight, and then they go back into the friend category. Yeah. But if you have a lot of big fights, then they hang out in the enemy category much longer and much less time in the friend category until you at some point say, basta finito, I'm tired of this. And you keep them in the enemy category for a good long time and make yourself and the other person quite miserable. Yeah. So this is the problem with attachment. What happens? Okay. So calming the attachment, learning to not put so much my on the relationships, learning to identify our expectations and reduce them. These are all ways to actually have better relationships with other people and to be able to expand our love towards more and more people because we have fewer and fewer strings. Okay? So that's one thing to understand before we really talk about love. The other thing to understand is that one of the big obstacles to generating love is anger and hatred, hostility, animosity. We have in English so many words for negative feelings. It's quite interesting, I wonder. I don't think we have nearly as many words for positive, affectionate feelings, but for negative feelings, we have wrath, rebelliousness, spite, outrage, enrage, rage, belligerence, wrath, animosity, hostility, anger, hatred. So many, don't we? Yeah, annoyance, irritation, frustration. I wonder sometimes how much, I know how much we're conditioned by having many words for this. Because if you have many words for a certain kind of category, it means that you're noticing that category more and you're noticing the differences between the different things that are all in that category. Okay? And so that makes it, I think it can increase the negative feelings we have towards others. Okay? So these kind of negative feelings, again, big problem to generating love, because when we don't like somebody and we, are angry or hate them or whatever, we don't wish them well. Yeah, we have a mind that's the total opposite of love. Yeah, love wants somebody to have happiness in its causes, and we say to that person we don't like, go to hell. We don't want them to have happiness in its causes, and we're quite explicit about that. Yeah, so, this kind of animosity that we hold on to, sometimes for years and years. Vengeance, that's another one. Grudge holding. Yeah. So this kind of really entrenched animosity that we often make a core point of our identity and who we think we are. You know, I'm the person who was traumatized by so-and-so. I'm the person who hates so-and-so. Yeah. I was the person who was, you know, insulted or whatever by so-and-so. And so we may, you know, it becomes a part of our identity that we hold on to quite a bit, you know, and really have this very strong negative feelings towards certain people and go through our whole lives with these negative feelings. Yeah? And then we wonder why, as old people, we're bitter. You know, if we cultivate these kind of negativities and have no way to release them, or don't even try to release them, or worse yet, we don't want to release them. We want to hang on to our negative feelings because they give us some sense of existing, yeah, then that becomes a huge obstacle for cultivating love. Yeah, agree? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here is where I think forgiveness is a very important prerequisite to generating love. Yeah, because forgiveness just means that we're putting our anger down. Doesn't mean what the person did was right. Doesn't mean that, you know, they can continue doing it. It simply means that I'm tired of being angry because I see my anger harms me. Yeah. And I talk a lot about forgiveness, and many people ask me afterwards and say, but I can't forgive them. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, you know, if we think I can't forgive them, why can't we forgive them? What prevents us from forgiving somebody? Yeah. And so, you know, we might think, well, what they did was so horrible, it doesn't deserve forgiveness. But I think the misunderstanding there is that forgiveness means what they did was okay, which it doesn't mean. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It just means we're stopping the anger, our anger. We can't stop their anger, but at least ours. Okay. So they'll say, oh, it was so terrible what they did. I can't forgive it. So that's like saying what they did was so terrible that there's no way I can ever not be angry about it. Yeah. If we say that to ourselves, that there's no way I can ever not be angry about it, then we are condemning ourselves to a lifetime of anger and hatred. And who is the primary one that suffers when our mind is filled with anger and hatred? Yeah. The other person doesn't suffer. They're off doing what they're doing. We're the ones who live with our anger and hatred. So we're the ones who are the most miserable when we hang on to it. Yeah. So then people will say, but, you know, they did this to me. How can I ever let go of it? But you see, that mind is the mind that makes ourselves into a victim. Yeah. And sees ourselves as a victim. And granted, we can get a lot of ego mileage out of being a victim. Yeah. Especially in our society. Make yourself a victim and you can take the ball and run with it, you know, and blame anybody and everybody create a ruckus, insist that everything is someone else's fault and that we bear no responsibility at all for what happens to us. And you might get a lot of people on your side and form, a whole identity as this person who is a victim. Sometimes even whole groups of people do this in society, develop a victim mentality. So I'm not saying that that somebody who sees themselves as a victim was not harmed by somebody else. They may have been harmed by somebody else, yes, for sure. Okay, and there is inequality and oppression in society, for sure. But that is different than making a victim identity part of our self-concept. Okay? This is quite important. Because when we make ourselves, make a victim identity part of our self-concept, then even if the external situation changes, our self-concept does not change. We stay stuck because we're angry, we're bitter, and we've gotten so familiar with this identity of being a victim that it becomes hard to change and sometimes even scary to change. If I don't see myself as a victim, who am I going to be? How am I going to introduce myself to other people? How will I relate to people if I have to put down and my anger towards the mistreatment I got? Yeah. Who will I be if I remember that the past is not happening now? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we have a long-term, cultivated identity as being an abused person, an oppressed person, a victim of somebody else's this and that, it really colors how we relate to other people in the future. Yeah, it makes us suspicious. Yeah, it impedes trusting others. It, creates a certain, there becomes something quite hard in us. But that hardness is also our most vulnerable place. Isn't that interesting that the area that we make really hard, with our anger, is our most vulnerable place, because we can't stand if anybody does anything resembling what was done before. We can't stand even if anybody says, you have a victim mentality. We just, no, I don't. We can't stand even to look and see if we may have some responsibility for the situation, even if that responsibility is karmic, something that was done in a previous life, not even something that we did now. We don't like in any way, shape, or form to think that we were, put it this way, we see ourselves as 100% totally innocent. Don't we? Yeah? So I'm not saying we're guilty. I'm not saying that. But we usually see things in very black and white terms. And if I'm suffering, I blame somebody, and that means it's 100% their fault. Not seeing that the other person's behavior depends on causes and conditions. Yeah, but thinking that they had the intention from beginningless time to do us harm. Yeah, which clearly wasn't the case. And not seeing that the other person's own weaknesses and problems in some way, but just seeing them as somebody with a really evil intention. Yeah. Whereas people who harm other people are definitely have some suffering, don't they? Okay, so these two things, you know, dealing with our attachment and exaggeration of somebody's good qualities or our expectations of what that person is going to do for us, and dealing with our anger and animosity towards others, you know, with the expectation that they will always be a harmful opponent, which of course is not true. These two attitudes really impede just wanting somebody to have happiness and the causes of happiness, which is actually a very simple wish, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, we want ourselves to have happiness and the causes of happiness. You know? And we don't even have to generate it. We feel that way from day one. Okay? So just saying, wow, the other person is exactly the same. They want happiness and its causes, just like I do. We're not different in that respect in any way. Why don't I wish them to have happiness and its causes? Especially because if I do, I'll be happier. Yeah. So I think, you know, I mean, scientists have done all sorts of research projects that show that when we have positive feelings towards others, we're happier ourselves. Actually, you don't need to spend millions of dollars in scientific research to show that. I think if we just looked in our mind for a short while, it becomes quite evident. You know, when we're embroiled with anger and belligerence and so on, we're very miserable. Yeah, when we have positive feelings towards others, then we feel much better ourselves. Okay. Another misconception we have about love is, again, you know, I'm going to feel so blissed out because I'm in love. You know, and here's where you get the movies and the radio songs and, you know, kind of I'm floating on heaven and, you know, nothing could ever be better and and all of that is basically BS. You know, because it's based on exaggeration and, you know, it cannot be maintained because it's not seeing the other person accurately. So it can't be maintained, and eventually we crash from that. Yeah. So, you know, if we want to, again, have stable relationships, this kind of thing of, I'm going to be floating on cloud 9 forever, I think we've got to get rid of that idea. Because, it really creates an impediment to actually caring about others. Another thing that is involved with attachment is this thing of being special. Yeah? That I'm special to that person and they're special to me. In one of our winter retreats, we were discussing this, and it came out very strongly. You know, people where you were at that retreat, and this whole idea of specialness and how if I'm special to somebody, then it means, well, it means I'm special. Yeah? And if I'm special, then first of all, I exist, and then I deserve different things because I'm special. Being special to somebody it's a buzz, isn't it? Which is why we become very attached to the people that we're special to. Yeah, because they make us feel good. And then, of course, if I'm special to you, you're going to be special to me. Yeah, because if you're, it's I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It goes both ways, doesn't it? Yeah. If I'm special to you, you must be really wonderful. Yeah? Because only wonderful people would see me as special, would hold me as special. Yeah? And you're special because you think I'm special. Yeah? And you're special because you make me feel good. Yeah? So it's interesting here how with both attachment and with anger, we say, you make me feel. So with attachment, you make me feel good. With anger, you make me feel terrible. Yeah. But actually, nobody makes us feel anything. Yeah. Nobody can crawl inside of us, flip some switches or push some buttons and make us feel something. Yeah, we feel things all by ourselves because the seed of anger, the seed of attachment, all these seeds exist in us. Yeah, so if we interpret a situation in a certain way, then we say, you made me mad. But we should really be saying, I'm interpreting that situation in a way that makes me angry. Or, if somebody does something and I say, oh, you make me feel wonderful, it's more accurate to say, I'm interpreting that situation in a specific way that's making me feel special. Okay? Because in actual fact, nobody else can make us feel anything. Yeah? And how we feel very much depends on how we conceptualize the situation. And this is actually what gives us the ability to change. Yeah? Because if what we were perceiving and basing our feelings on were some kind of objective entity of who this person was or what this behavior meant, if that was objective, then there's no way we could change our experience of it. We would be stuck with whatever we interpreted, and we would be stuck with whatever we experienced as a result of that interpretation. But because what we see in the world is not objective out there, if we look at the situation from a different way, then it appears differently to us and we experience it differently and our feelings about it change. Yeah? And so this is the beauty, I think, of the Dharma practice, is that it gives us the ability to look at things in a different way, in a more realistic way. Yeah. And in that way, it transforms our feelings, and we're able to let go of the attachment and the anger and the need to be special. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit as an introduction to love. Maybe there's some questions, comments. We can have some discussion about this. Yeah, You're trying to create peace with the past. Yeah, you're creating peace with the past. I don't think when we forgive that we necessarily have to forget. Yeah, because there's many times where we need to learn from things in the past so that we don't repeat them. Yeah, we don't forget genocide as a society. We remember it so that we're very careful not to do that again. But we don't have to hate the people who committed the genocide. Okay? So it's a way of, yes, bringing peace in our own mind and making peace with the past, because the past is not happening now. Yeah? When we remember a harm somebody did to us, we are doing it to ourselves again and again. Yeah. They said something once, we ruminate on it and say it to ourselves 100 times. Okay? So forgiving is just saying, I'm going to stop doing that. Yeah? I don't have to relate to that person in this way. I don't have to cling on to, what a confused, suffering person did out of their own confusion and misery and make that part of my identity. Yeah. In fact, I am not going to do that. I refuse to do that. Yeah. And then we, are able to put it down. And then that helps us to see the person in a different light instead of always projecting, you are the person who did this and that, 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Yeah, what's the use for hating somebody for something that they did so many years ago that they're no longer doing? That we're the only person in the whole wide world who remembers them doing it. Yeah? So it's a very freeing experience to be able to forgive. Okay. So if you find yourself kind of having, I call it free-floating anger. Yeah. I'd have that, wake up in the morning in a bad mood and whoever said good morning to me got it. They didn't have to do anything more. So this general grumpiness, we don't have to remember specific situations in order to heal from our anger. Okay? In psychology, you go back and your childhood and you look at this and that kind of conditioning. In Buddhism, that's really not so important. Sometimes, we can see different, if we look at it as conditioning instead of as that person did this to me, then it could be helpful. But if we don't have to do it, we can just look at the present state of mind and how am I conceptualizing things right now? Yeah? Like, why am I seeing what this person is? Well, first of all, how am I seeing what this person's doing? And second of all, why do I need to get angry at it or angry about it? Okay, so just simply looking at the present state of mind and how it is thinking. Does that make some sense? Yeah? Because, pardon?
Oftentimes easier said than done.
Yeah, but if we have beginningless lifetimes, and if we had to go back and psychologize each of the events in our beginningless lifetimes, we would spend endless lifetimes doing that. Yeah. And who wants to do that? Okay? So there has to be a way of, and what I think is quite important is we can often find patterned ways of responding, patterned ways of response, patterned ways of thinking about a situation that we have. And if we're able to identify those patterns and then ask ourselves, is that a correct way of seeing something? And see how we continually look at different things through a certain colored filter. And we can identify that filter. Then at a certain point we can say, hey, that's a filter, and what about if I took it away? Okay. For example, maybe we were in a relationship where we got hurt for whatever reason. Yeah. And therefore, it's hard for us to trust friends or family or anybody. And we look at everybody kind of through the lens of, okay, when are you going to betray me and hurt me? And so we approach every relationship kind of standing back with, well, I want to be close, but I don't really trust you because I'm assuming that you're going to hurt me. In fact, not just assuming, I'm sure that you're going to hurt me because I can read minds. And I know everybody in this world is going to hurt me. Yeah. And you see, okay, that's just this pattern I have. Then we can put it down. But then the question comes, but what happens if somebody does something and you are hurt? Well, then the thing is, okay, somebody did X, Y, and Z. Why do I need to feel hurt about that? Yeah. I think we often feel hurt because we had unrealistic expectations. Yeah. We thought we were going to be special forever. And the person may even have said you're going to be special forever. But is it realistic to think that any sentient being can predict their future emotions forever? That's not realistic, is it? Even if they say that. Yeah. Even if at the time someone feels, I'm going to love you from now until Buddhahood throughout all our future lives, even if somebody feels that at that moment and says that, is it realistic on our part to think that an average sentient being who has ignorance, anger, and attachment in their mind stream, that kind of sentient being will be able to maintain that feeling forever? It's not realistic to assume that they'll be able to do that, is it? Yeah. Just like, can you assume that you will feel the same way about somebody who's special to you now? That, you're always going to be special to me? That's, can you predict that you're always going to feel that way? We can't say that for ourselves, so why do we expect that from others? So I think it's more realistic, not also don't make that fact as, okay, I know you're going to betray my trust, I know it's unrealistic to think you're always going to love me, so I know you're going to betray my trust, so I'm sitting here ready for it. Yeah, that's not going to help you form good relationships either. What a healthy attitude is, we came together, we share, we try and benefit each other, and conditions change. And so feelings change. And that's natural. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't need that person's affection to be able to continue to exist in this world. Yeah, I can, work with my own mind, develop a sense of contentment and satisfaction in my own mind, be more concerned with my loving others than with how they relate to me. And if I do that, and I'm more concerned about what I give to them rather than measuring, okay, I gave that to you, and what are you doing back for me? Yeah. Then, it becomes much easier to have healthy relationships. Okay. But this involves changing our mind. Yeah. If you don't want to change your mind and your way of thinking, then nothing's going to change. Okay, so which comes first, the releasing anger or the cultivation of love? It depends on the situation. In some situations, if you're very familiar with cultivating love and you see you're starting to get angry, and you know that your anger is a skewed interpretation, then if you bring yourself back to cultivating love, that can help you subdue the anger. In other situations, maybe you're not so well trained yet, and the anger is strong, and you really have to see why your anger is, and your conception of it is unrealistic. And so you have to spend some time like that to see the unrealistic aspect of the anger so that you can let it go and then develop love on top of that. So it kind of depends on the situation and on how long you've been meditating. Okay, I know for myself, there was no way at the beginning that I could go to love, because I was so, I hung on so strongly to my interpretation of certain things that, saying, may you have, happiness and its causes, it was like I couldn't go there, okay? And I really had to spend some time seeing how my anger was based on incorrect conceptuality, and really get that very, very clear in my mind that this is based on, wrong interpretation. And then that enabled me to release the anger, and then it became easier to wish them well. Okay? But as you train more and more, you don't need to go through that as much, because when anger comes, you can say, oh, that's an incorrect interpretation more quickly. Yeah, instead of... Yeah, I mean, sometimes you need to go into why, and sometimes it, because you've done that so much in the past, you see it very clearly at the beginning, why that's unrealistic. Yeah, okay, so when people are doing things that hurt themselves or cause inconvenience to themselves and others. So there's a difference there, because your mom traveling with 5 overweight bags, that isn't really harming her. It's just inconveniencing herself, and of course inconveniencing the people who have to carry all the stuff for her. Okay, that's much different than if your mom were, kind of slapping your little sister every day and criticizing her and directly harming her. Okay, so it's 2 different situations. So sometimes, with people's inability to be satisfied, inability to, whatever, some of that we just have to accept. Yeah, it's just like, you can say if you take less, it might be easier. But if that person says, no, there's no way I can take less, what are you going to do? Yeah? I mean, if you quarrel with them, then they're unhappy, you're unhappy, and they're still going to take all those suitcases. Yeah, and then some, right? Okay. Whereas, if somebody is really harming somebody, then you need to intercede and, do something about it. So, but, one of the big things is people don't always do what we want them to do. And that can be frustrating sometimes and, very angersome. You want people to feel a certain way. You want them to act a certain way, and they just don't do it. And they should, supposed to, ought to, must. Says who?
Me.
That's right, me. Yeah, but are you going to be able to change her mind?
No, but I wish I could. I wish I could feel lighter,
Yeah, but you can't.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so let go. Yeah. I mean, we can influence people, but we can't make them do anything. So on something that's just a matter of convenience or inconvenience, let yourself be happy. Because I want you to be happy, and you're not being happy when you're doing that, and that's frustrating to me and making me unhappy. So I'm going to try and make you happy because you're unhappy because your mother's carrying all those suitcases. Do you see? Okay. Yeah. That, there's a way. It's not easy, okay? But I think the more that we are whole people ourselves, the more our relationships with others become balanced. Yeah. So if you see the way that you depend on him in an unrealistic way, maybe start thinking of how can I satisfy those needs myself? Or what else can I do to satisfy those needs besides pinning them on one particular individual? Yeah? Because the more that you can have empathy for yourself, satisfy your own needs, and be a whole person, then the more you're actually able to bring to the relationship. Um, I think it's you may be able to cultivate love with some people, but it won't. You have to forgive to be able to cultivate love with that person that you're upset with. Yeah. And sometimes if we're really holding on to a grudge very strongly, that can also interfere with having an open heart towards other people too, because of what I was saying, when we just assume people are going to act the same way that that one person acted towards us. Yeah, which is a false assumption. Yeah. I also think, when we're hurt, because so often when we're hurt, we feel like I was destroyed. And then we get very frightened of being hurt again in the future because we think we're going to get destroyed. And I think, getting hurt does not destroy us. Yeah, it doesn't at all. I mean, we've all gotten hurt, haven't we? We're all still alive. It doesn't destroy us. Yeah, we can still function as people. We can still live. So maybe also, not making having gotten hurt such a big deal in our own minds. It's like, because sometimes, when we've been hurt, we feel nobody else has ever gone through what I've gone through. The betrayal, the abuse, the rejection, the abandonment. Nobody else has ever experienced this like I have. If you think like that, then you haven't talked to many people. Yeah? Because as soon as you talk with people, you see, wow, everybody's had that experience. It's not an unusual experience. Anybody here, I mean, just look, anybody here who's never been hurt? Yeah? But, how to keep yourself from, not keeping yourself from putting yourself in that position doesn't mean that you don't trust people. It means that you cultivate the ability to remain centered yourself and not become so emotionally dependent on somebody with so many unrealistic expectations, and develop the ability to meet our own needs, develop the ability to bring peace in our own mind without expecting other people to bring peace in our mind. And I think this is where, the Dharma and meditation practice is so beautiful, is it teaches us ways to bring peace into our own mind, and then we don't need to depend on somebody else telling us we're good or whatever to have a peaceful mind. And then when they don't do that, we don't feel so hurt. Yeah, very good point that the media gives us, and romance novels too, completely wrong idea of what relationships are. So you approach it that way, that, oh, I should feel love. And then, the next scene in the movie is they're quarreling and saying awful things to each other. Oh, it's terrible. And then you make up and you love each other again. And then you quarrel again. And so you begin to think that, that relationships are built on drama. Yeah? They're built on extreme extreme emotions of elatedness and dejection, and that unless you have drama in your relationships, you're not doing it right. Oh, give me a break. People ask His Holiness about that, and His Holiness says, yeah, I may not feel so much ecstasy, but I also don't feel so down. And I think it's worthwhile to feel more steady. I don't mind giving up the elation just to have the steadiness in my mind. Yeah? But you really see some people, they love drama, and they create drama, and they don't feel comfortable unless there's drama. Yeah? And these people can be extremely difficult to be around. And they can be extremely difficult to be one of, because your own mind is like this, Okay. Because being indifferent is an ego way of protecting itself. Indifferent is, you don't affect me this way, you don't affect me that way, so you don't exist. Okay? Whereas what we're trying to get to is open-hearted concern that realizes every living being, human or not human, as somebody who wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. Yeah? And we care about that person. Yeah. At least we wish that person happy. We may not be able to make them happy, but we wish them happiness. Whereas indifference is, I don't care. Yeah. These are the people who love drama. Yeah? The people who see, first of all, they don't understand what you're saying, that you can still have a lot of emotion and affection and positive feelings. It doesn't mean that you're flat emotionally. Yeah, but the people who say that often, really love the drama. Why don't we like the boringness? I think because, the self-grasping ignorance, what does it grasp? It grasps at an independent I, this feeling of me. Yeah? When emotionally there's not a lot of drama, then there's not a lot of me. And this feeling of me, even if it's painful, the self-grasping ignorance thrives on it because it means I exist. Yeah. And I won't be important and nobody will notice me. Yeah. Whereas if I create drama, I will be noticed. People will see me as existing, and that's better than being ignored. Hmm? We had a young woman come here over the winter who saw that pattern in herself. She had a hard time controlling it, but she was able to verbalize that pattern in herself, and said, so I'll go along and I'll be fine for a while, and then, then I need attention. So I create drama. And of course the attention she gets is a negative kind of attention, not the kind of attention she really wants. But, for self-grasping ego, it doesn't matter. Just, give me some attention, even if you hate me. Okay. This is why we need to get rid of self-grasping ignorance, because it doesn't think properly.